Some of you are gonna friggin' love this, and some of you are gonna think it's no, woo-woo. But I'm going to share with you the idea of how things become real. And so if you watch this, what this is gonna help you do is to think about where you want to go while dropping the resistance that you've had up to this point. In this presentation, I was asking my team to be flexible and open to the idea that we could create new possibilities, that we didn't have to base what we do next on what we've done in the past. In order to introduce that idea to them, I started by asking them the question, what is a possibility? When we say, let's create a possibility, let's do something new together, what is a possibility? And we had this interesting philosophical conversation about this. And I explained that my belief is that in quantum physics, a possibility is a real thing. A possibility is something that we can't see or hear or smell or taste or touch. But a possibility exists somewhere out there in the world, that there's an infinite number of possibilities and that any number of them could unfold, could be realized in the physical plane. I know I'm getting a little bit out there, but stick with me. It's just the idea of what if the possibility is a real thing? What if things that haven't happened yet are all somewhere out there in the quarks and string theories of the world? Just what if? What if a possibility is a real thing? And I asked the question, when does something become a possibility? Not when does it become real, but when does it become a possibility? And I said, what possibilities do I have right now? I could raise my right hand. I could raise both my hands. I could raise them up over my head. I could stand up and walk. I could say this sentence right now. All these things are possibilities. And I asked my team, what other possibilities are there? And someone said, you could bark like a dog or something like that. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I hadn't considered that possibility. When did that become a possibility? When did it become a possibility that I could bark like a dog? Was it when you said it? Was it when you thought it? Was it before you thought it? When did that possibility exist? When did it get birthed into existence? And someone said, when he communicated it to you is when it became a possibility to you. And I said, that's what I think too. That it was always a possibility somewhere out there, but it was a possibility to me when someone else communicated it to me and I had that thought. Does any of this matter? It does. And here's why. Over the last several years, as I've tried to unpack my own mental gunk and juju and my introspection, which Alex Hormozy says annoys him to no end. His exact words were that my introspection makes him violently angry or violently bothered. That's how introspective I am. I've read a bunch of books on this topic and different perspectives of this topic. And what you see on your screen is a screenshot of some of the most recent ones I've read. You can add a bunch of other books to this list as well. But they're all different ideas about how things become real, about how things unfold. And all of them sort of say the same thing in different ways. And I'm going to boil it into my opinion of all this, of how things become real. How possibilities come into existence is through this process. The first is the receiving of an idea. The receiving of an idea is the creation of a possibility. You think it up, or it comes to you in a moment of inspiration, or it comes to you in your quiet time, as Trevor Blake would put it. But at some point, a thought appears. You receive the idea or the possibility. Now, what happens before then? Who frickin' knows? Like, maybe it's all influenced by things that we can't see, but at some point, it enters into your experience through an idea. And that usually comes from space, like meditation or clear-mindedness or gardening in the backyard. Usually comes from space, not from sitting there thinking about it. That's step one, the receiving of an idea. The second is the acceptance and declaration of that possibility. It is enrolling someone else into the idea. Why? Because that shows conviction. It means that you're essentially willing to allow this thought through, allow this possibility through, and communicating it to someone else shows conviction. Conviction inspires belief, and belief is focused attention. So you receive the thought, you communicate it to someone else, and then you give it focused attention. Belief. I believe in this. I have conviction about this. I am moving towards this. And evidence of belief is inspired action. Action towards the belief that you have conviction about. That creates progress. Are you still watching this video? How do things become real, Ryan? First, you think it up. Then you tell somebody, and then you give it focused attention, which inspires action because you believe it to be true. This is how things become real. But here's where things get interesting. When they become real is when we simply agree upon them. Let me tell you what I mean. I recently created the possibility for myself that I want to have a $100 million net worth within the next 7 years. That idea came to me, was birthed from me. That was the creation of the possibility. I then declared it, told it to other people because it was compelling enough for me to focus on. There was enough desire for me to communicate it to somebody else. That was like the choosing of it. I can coach myself into believing it by finding evidence that it's true. And then while I am believing that, I take action towards it in a way that feels meaningful towards that goal. Here's where it gets weird. At what point can we point to it and say that it's real? Well, let's look at it this way. If I raise money for capitalism.com, my company, if I raise money for this at a $200 million valuation, and I raise 50% of it, well, I still own half of my business at a $200 million valuation. So do I now have a net worth of $100 million? Well, where's my $100 million? It's not in the bank. It's not in the stock market. My $100 million doesn't exist anywhere except people's heads, except people saying, oh yeah, he's worth $100 million. How do we agree on that? It's subjective. If you own $100 million worth of Bitcoin, what is that actually saying? Well, you're valuing Bitcoin on what the last person said it was worth. The last person who bought it or sold it, they agreed it was worth that price and they were willing to transact it. That's what sets the price of Bitcoin, what the last two people agreed to sell it for. Agreement is the realization of a possibility. When multiple people agree that it is true, that is when things actually become real. First, the receiving of the idea, then the declaration to somebody else. That's conviction, focused attention, belief, action towards it, and then the agreement, other people saying, that's real. That's what reality is. It's just agreement between individuals. So what I do with my team is we picked a possibility that I knew would stretch them. It's a possibility that I've communicated to you on YouTube before, is the idea of taking capitalism.com to a consistent $1 million in monthly revenue by June of 2023. I told my team that we didn't need to accomplish this goal or this possibility because we needed the money. We don't need to do it because anything bad is going to happen or anything good is going to happen. We're going to accomplish this possibility. We're going to realize this possibility just to prove to ourselves that we can. Just to go through the process of choosing a possibility and carrying it through, of seeing it through, for the sheer joy and fun of making something up and making it real. So this is my opinion about how things become real. Going from thought to belief to real. And I hope as a result of watching this that you give yourself permission to just pick one. And then when you pick one, you communicate it to somebody else. So when you communicate it, you coach yourself into believing it. And the evidence of you believing it will be the action towards it. And as you move in action towards it, other people agree that it is real. And that's how things become real. That's it. And you can create whatever you want through that. Change my mind.